Thanks for joining me in Charleston, South Carolina. If you've never been here, you really should. You see, this place brings people together, both visitors and the citizens, in a really unique way through the power of locally grown food. A National Historic Landmark and America's oldest landscape garden, Middleton Place has been described by many as the most interesting and most important landscape in the United States. But I'm not here to see the garden today. We're actually here to take a look at the animals in the stable yard. You see, recently renovated, the stable yard is the home to heritage breeds of livestock and poultry. And there's no better place to get acquainted with them than there. Bob, it's just amazing all the changes that have happened here at Middleton Place since I was here last.
We've added some new fencing, we have some new heritage breeds, really kind of ramping up a little bit. We've been growing Carolina Gold rice, of course, a wonderful heirloom grain for years, and we've added to that idea more livestock that they might have had back in their time for visitors to see. Of course, not the scale they had.
No, right.
But it's something, frankly, people don't get out and see these kinds of animals ever.
There really is a wide range of livestock here that really sort of, I think, represents what would have been here in the day.
Very much so. Everything from water buffalo oxen to heritage breeds of poultry. As a matter of fact, just got a new arrival, some Spanish goats we're actually pretty excited about.
Really?
Yeah, I'd love to show them to you.
I'd love to see them.
Bud and Mo, two of our new arrivals. You know, for a long time, Spanish goats was a name they'd give to sort of a mongrel goat, but these are true, purebred Spanish goats.
Yeah.
Going back to the Spanish, of course. Once common throughout the Southeast.
And the Caribbean.
Quite.
Yeah. And then, of course, here's a French Alpine that wants to get in the act.
Ah, yes, old Leroy.
That's great.
And you know, the thing about keeping these heritage breeds, I mean, they may not be the greatest meat producer or hair producer or milk producer, but keeping that genetic diversity is very, very important.
Yeah.
You know, something we've discovered today, and by having places like this, where frankly, they're here more for education and interpretation, but it gives them a home.
Sure.
It gives them a safe and wonderful place, and we can share them with the public.
Yeah, you're safe harboring the genetics by having them here. And,
exactly.
And it's wonderful for the public to actually experience them firsthand. And this also holds for poultry.
Very much so. Oh, she's been hard at work. Laid 3 eggs.
She's a busy girl, that's for sure.
She is. There you go.
I'm going to call you the chicken whisperer.
Yeah.
So this is a little Dominique hen, considered the oldest American breed of chicken.
She is, and the base stock for a lot of breeds that are around today.
Well, Bob, it's inspiring to see what you all are doing here at Middleton with regard to these breeds, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. We appreciate your work as well. Thank you for coming out to see us. We appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Still to come on Garden Style, a trip to the United States' only tea plantation. But up next, a centuries-old recipe served up in the Low Country. So stay tuned. The chickens that most Americans eat today, well, they're very different than what our grandparents ate in the past. You see, commercial poultry production is all about getting birds up to a certain marketable size as quickly as possible. Some of the things lost with that sort of production, well, would include genetic diversity and also flavor. Birds that take longer to mature have better flavor. You see, there's a movement today to conserve these heritage breeds. Many chefs prefer them because of the flavor profile is so much better. And by these chefs and consumers asking for these heritage breeds, it's putting them back to work and conserving their genetics. Isn't that right, girl?
My name is Fred Newville, and currently I own a fat hen that's on Johns Island in Charleston, South Carolina. Today we're making a Coq Au Vin. I've been making this same Coq Au Vin since 1985. and it is absolutely delicious. This is a Coq Au Vin farm chicken, a 3.5 pound bird. What you want to do is you want to quarter your chicken. We brine for 2 days. Now, after your chicken is brined for 2 days, you're going to take it out of the brine, you're going to pat it dry. The reason why you want to pat it dry is because you're going to throw it in hot oil. If it's not dry, then it's going to spatter on you, and also you're not going to get a very good sear. You're going to boil your chicken as opposed to searing it. And then you have your pan with olive oil. It's nice and hot. You want it to the smoking point. You're going to season your chicken on one side, and then you're going to place your chicken in your hot oil in your pan, skin side down. That's the most important side to sear, because when you start searing your chicken, your pan is going to cool down, okay? You want to shake it a little bit just so that it's not sticking, and then you get a nice brown sear on that. You flip it over, you season it again with salt and pepper, and remember, you want to do that liberally. You want the chicken to be flavorful, not bland. So you have a nice sear on it. You're going to remove your chicken. You're going to place it in a pan that you can top off with liquid, okay? So it's got to be a high pan. Now you begin your sauce process. So you're going to add mirepoix, your carrots, your onion, and celery. You're also going to add whole garlic. You're going to stir that around your pan a little bit, then you're going to add tomato paste. You add your tomato paste, you're going to swirl that around your pan a little bit, and you want to bring that sweetness out in that tomato paste. So you're going to cook it a little bit. Then you're going to add your red wine. You're going to want to reduce that down just by a quarter. You're going to bring it to a boil to get rid of that winey flavor. It is Coq Au Vin, but you don't want to eat a drunk chicken. Okay? And you don't want to taste that wine flavor. So then you add your tomatoes, and then you add your chicken stock. And you let that cook. All you're going to do is bring it back to a boil. While it's coming back to a boil, you're going to make your sachet bag. And what that is just a little bag of herbs and spices. And it's fresh parsley stems. A standard sachet bag is parsley stems, fresh thyme, peppercorns, bay leaf. That's it. Put it in your cheesecloth, tie it up, throw it in there. By that time, your sauce should be just about to a boil. When it comes to a boil, you're going to take that, you're going to pour it over your chicken. Then you're going to take a piece of saran wrap, cover the pan with just the top, and then foil. And the reason why you want to cover it with the saran wrap is because it locks it in. It'll help the steam and it'll keep the heat in, and it's just so much better. Then you cover it with your foil, and then you throw it in your oven at 250 degrees for an hour and a half. When hour and a half is done, you're going to pull it out. You're going to make sure that the skin and the meat on the end of the leg bone are just coming away from the bone. That's a sign that it's done. All right? Then you're going to unwrap it, put it in your refrigerator, let it cool down, preferably overnight, but it doesn't have to be. You set your chicken aside, you strain your sauce, and then you're going to reduce it down just by a quarter. That'll give it a nice richness. You're going to put your chicken in a cold pan, skin side up. You're going to pour some sauce in there, and you're going to throw it in the oven. 350, 12 to 15 minutes, depending upon your oven. While your chicken is in the oven, what you're going to do is you're going to get your vegetables ready. And what our vegetables were today for this season are bacon lardons. The bacon is from Coq Au Vin Farms. Sweet potatoes. We have parsnips, carrots, and shallots, and mushrooms as well. You're going to add some sauce to that. You're going to cook that for a little bit, and then you're going to add just a little bit of butter. Set that aside, take your chicken, put it on top of your vegetables, the sauce that you heated the chicken in, just a little bit on top, and then just a little bit of that sauce that you added a little bit of butter to right on top of that, and voila, you have Coq Au Vin.
A vibrant restaurant scene and local food cultures made Charleston one of the leading destinations for foodies around the country. But it's just not the food that brings people to places like the Crew Cafe.
My name is William Barclay Hall, and we're here on Wadmalaw Island, just south of Charleston, at the only tea plantation in America. All the tea that we drink as Americans come from other countries: India, China, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, Africa, and this is really the only place where tea is grown in this country. There are a few other places around, but they're very small compared to us. We are really a commercial tea plantation here. So if you let these plants grow, they grow to a tree 20, 30 feet high. So it's really a tree that we're keeping to the size of a bush, and that is in order to harvest the top leaves. All the attempts to grow tea in America have dated back to the 1800s, and when you take a cutting of a plant and produce a new plant, that plant isn't 1 year old. It's the same age as the mother plant that you took the cuttings from. So all our plants date back to 1888, and they've been around for a long time and therefore are acclimated to South Carolina. And what tea really loves to survive is high temperature, high humidity, and good rainfall. And Charleston gives us all three. So the tea plant survives very well here. If we were going to make new tea plants, we'd take what we call a whip, which is something like this, cut it with 2 leaves. We leave the 2 leaves on to give it nutrients and to take in the water and the nutrients, and we just stick it in the media, the soil that we use, forming a root system. So a new root ball will come out of here, and then within a year and a half out to the field. We can start harvesting it after about 3 years. It'll reach maturity in the 5th year and be good for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now there's only 3 basic teas in the world. There's black tea, green tea, and oolong tea. And they all come from the exact same tea plant. It's how you make them in the factory to determine whether that tea is going to be green, black, or oolong. We're here at the withering bed. The leaves come from the field and are put into this machine where they reduce the moisture slightly before going to the grinders. These prods then push the leaf onto the conveyor, up the conveyor, and into the grinders. It then falls into these grinders. They're called rotavane grinders. This is where it macerates the leaf, breaks the cell wall, and exposes the tea juices to the air. Goes through 3 grinders here. Once the leaf is macerated, this is what it looks like, a nice green color that's ready to now go straight into the dryer and begin reducing the moisture down to approximately 2%. This machine is based on static electricity that pulls all these stems and fibers out of the tea to be left with a pure green tea ready to be packaged and served to the consumer.
Coming up after the break, the inspiring story of a teenager who is sharing her love of gardening to kids and communities across the nation. Just look at all this beautiful produce. You know, if you want to support your local community, a great place to start is go to the farmer's market and support local growers. Now, there's one young lady who's taken this a step further. Katys Garden from Summerville, South Carolina, had an idea where she could create gardens and maintain them across the country where the food from these gardens would actually go to help those in need. Katie, this garden is amazing. It's so big.
Thank you so much. I know, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes.
Good heavens. Well, you know, when you started with the idea, you didn't think of a garden this big, did you?
No, definitely not. When we started, there was only a couple of rows, and I never thought that we would use all this land. So we've had this garden for about 5 years now, and each year we add another row, add some more plants, so.
You know, one of the things I really like about the design and layout is you have these long rows, you have really wide spaces for the kids to walk in, and the beds are a little bit narrower so they can reach in and work.
It's really great because we have so many kids come up here and so many classes that we need a lot of room for all the kids to maneuver their way through the garden, especially with wheelbarrows when we're wheelbarrowing and compost.
When they're working and doing
and soil
things.
And all sorts of things, so yeah.
So it's like an outdoor classroom.
It really is. We've had PE classes come up here and work, science classes.
This big idea started with one of these little plants.
Yes, it all started with a cabbage when I was in the 3rd grade.
A cabbage plant.
Yes, I brought it home from school one day. The Bonnie Plant's 3rd grade cabbage program had brought cabbage seedlings to my 3rd grade classroom. I brought it home, I planted it, and it grew to be a 40-pound cabbage.
No, 40 pounds?
I brought it to a soup kitchen, and it helped to feed 275 people.
That is a wonderful story.
I became inspired and thought, if one cabbage can help to feed 275 people,
Yeah.
imagine how many people an entire garden could feed. And that was the inspiration and motivation for me to start Katys Crops.
Well, it's a wonderful idea, and it's very inspiring.
Thank
Keep up
you.
the good work.
Thank you so much.
Brandy, I just love this house.
So do I.
It is fantastic. So this family lived in this house like this until the 1970s, and this really reflects, what, the 1880s?
This does. The color palette that you see today is one of the last major restorations that happened in this house.
Some people may come in and look at the state of these rooms and go, this place is falling apart. Get to work, repaint.
And some people do. They say, well, when are you restoring this house?
Right. Is it up next?
Yeah. And then we explain the philosophy. And in fact, preservation has found does not mean that we allow these interiors to deteriorate. We are working very hard to stop the clock, which is actually much more difficult than a restoration.
I'm sure. Yeah, I really feel like I'm in a time capsule when I come to this this place. It's because you've preserved it, and you walk in and you get this sense of authenticity. I think it's one of the reasons that I've always loved this house so much.
Me too.
It's one thing to visit a property and enjoy the architecture, the decorative arts and furnishings and so forth, but it's quite another when you can get a little closer to perhaps how they might have lived during that time. And one of the best ways to do this is maybe even try some of the food they may have eaten.
We have a farm-to-table feast, and we're going to be in the Aikens courtyard. It is exactly where people would have been working and eating, a night to talk about heritage and history in a place that has an aura that everybody can feel.
Want to learn more? Visit PAllenSmith.com for delicious recipes, garden tips, blog posts, and our online store. We'll be back right after a short break. Well, as you can see, the party is well underway here at the Aiken Red House. Very exciting. Hope you've enjoyed our journey through the South Carolina Low Country. We've connected with farmers and chefs and seen how the whole food scene here has been revitalized. Hope you've been inspired to check out your own local farmers market and connect with a farmer yourself. Until next time, for Garden Style, I'm Alan Smith.
We have a goal of 500 gardens in all 50 states within the next 5 years.
If somebody has an idea to create a garden, a food garden where they can help people who are hungry, they can submit an application.
Yes, we have grant cycles open. We have grant cycles once a year, and we receive applications from kids ages 9 to 16 across the United States, and they tell us about how they want to start a garden, and we pick as many as we possibly can, and you start your own Katys Crops garden.